Jiang Heiai was an ugly, disgusting, lonely loser that no one ever wanted to talk to, until one day, he suddenly became the harem king and made all the hot girls fall for him. But before he got there, Heiai was getting chased by a mob until he fell to his death, where a pink goddess showed up and asked him if he had eaten Cupid's chocolates. Earlier that day, the school beauty, Xia, walked up to him and clasped his hand in hers, trembling as she brought his hand to her belly, and said that she was pregnant with his child. When he said that he didn't even know her, all the students turned into a furious mob and chased him down mercilessly. He promised to meet Xia on the rooftop later to talk about this, and ran as fast as his feet could take him. In the hallway, he managed to fight off all the guys in one swift motion, but he was powerless against the female students, who were ripped as fuck. Tang Xuan, the captain of the athletics team, slapped him out of jealousy. It turned out she was just as delusional as Xia, and started calling him her lover. As if that wasn't enough, a third girl named Ling Yuan came running and hugged him out of nowhere, begging him to come home to his kids. But Heiai doesn't even know her, much less have her kids. The mob became even more furious and chased him all the way to the rooftop together with the two girls who claimed to be his lover. Confused and angry, Heiai screamed at the top of his lungs that he didn't know any of these girls, and threatened to jump off as he stepped out on the ledge to prove his innocence. However, the mob didn't believe him and rushed forward to grab him, but this only made Heiai let go of the railings. As he was falling to his death, a pillar of light descended from above, stopping time itself. Instead of hitting the ground with a wham, his body gently touched the ground as a pink goddess looked at him. She grabbed him by his collar and shook him as she screamed at him for eating Cupid's chocolates. This jogged Heiai's memories about seeing a chocolate cake by itself on the rooftop yesterday, and bringing it to the girls for them to eat together. The love goddess, Maytata, explained that eating Cupid's chocolates with a girl would make them have false memories of being his lover, and proudly wished for his happiness. But to Heiai, this situation meant that he was fucked for life. Maytata said that he only has to fulfill their most desired wish in order to lift the magic spell, and then he can go live as he wished. After that, time returned to normal, and the mob on the rooftop rushed downstairs to check for his body on the ground. As he hid from them, Heiai remembered he was supposed to meet Xia on the rooftop hours earlier, and imagined the worst had happened. So he rushed back to the top and found her crying alone. The next day, he brought her to a clinic to get a pregnancy test, and pumped his fist up in the air in joy when he found out that the results were negative. This confused Xia, swearing she felt something had moved in her belly, and promised to make sure she got pregnant the next time. But Heiai refused and offered to take her home instead. Later on, the two of them arrived in a wealthy mansion, where they were greeted by guards bowing their heads to them. Xia fondly recalled her false memory of Heiai proposing to her in front of her parents and got rejected, saying she was grateful for his passionate feelings for her. Inside her mansion, Heiai was surprised to hear from her housekeeper that she was living by herself because her father rarely came home after his business expanded. As he was about to leave, one of the house guards crashed into the living room after receiving a phone call from the school, saying that Heiai knocked up their young miss. All the guards beat him up good, but Xia cried that she loved him and promised to marry him even if he were poor, and that she would do her best to get pregnant next time, making the guards drag back Heiai to beat him up more. In order to escape them, she dragged him to her room and shut the door behind her. Heiai pressed his hand against her lips to shut her up, because she kept riling the guards up unnecessarily. Realizing how close he was to her, he stumbled back to her desk, where he saw last year's calendar with her notes on how happy she was to eat with her father. This made Heiai furious enough to blast the door open and grab the phone from the housekeeper, who was calling Xia's father. He screamed at the phone that he was the one who knocked up his daughter in order to force a meeting with him, but in response, her father just hung up the phone. As soon as he did, an army of helicopters and black cars arrived at the mansion, dropping off the master of the house himself. Heiai trembled in fear as Xia's father appeared before him, accompanied by armed soldiers. He ordered the men to put their weapons away and beat Heiai up, until Xia gave him the negative test results from the hospital, and became confused about his outburst on the phone. Heiai trudged forward and stared up at her father as he said that if he hadn't taken the blame like that, he wouldn't even come home to his daughter, who needed his affection more than their luxurious house and all the gifts. Those words resonated with everyone present in that mansion, and with that, Heiai took his leave. He ran until his chest heaved heavily, only to find out that he was just at the back door of her house. But Xia still appeared and thanked him with a kiss, before vanishing into thin air. Just then, Maytada made her entrance, perched on top of the ivy growing on the gate, and explained that he was able to break the spell by fulfilling her most desired wish. The next day at school, Heiai slipped undetected into his classroom, or so he thought. Zia had come over his desk and asked him out on a date, so Heiai blurted out Maytada's name and summoned her, stopping time once more. Maytada told him that although her false memories were now gone because the spell was broken, she still would remember what happened the past 2 days, and won't necessarily erase her present feelings. After she disappeared, Heiai reluctantly agreed to a date with her, but then the door blew open and knives flew to his seat. A dark-haired girl, a young Zuli, thrusted a sword just inches away from his groin, and kissed him hard to mark her territory in front of Zia. Her mother was also there and threw a bag at her face to scold her for flying from America all the way there, just for some boy. The mother and daughter started glaring at each other as neither of them wanted to back off. The mother knocked her out and had her carried away by guards. Later on, Heiai told Maytada that she was his wild childhood friend, and Zia overheard this even though she didn't see who he was talking to. She thought about canceling their date, worried about Zuli being his childhood sweetheart, but to her surprise, Heiai wanted to continue their date for tomorrow. After that, Heiai bumped into Shuin in the staircase, who slapped him out of the blue and broke up with him. This irritated him since they didn't actually know each other, and he hated the fact that a girl had more balls to break up with him first, and yelled that no one would take her with that attitude. When she left, Maytada advised him that when women say let's break up, they usually mean it as a warning, which left Heiai thinking that he may have broken her heart so badly that she might isekai herself. But his assumptions were shattered when he saw Shuin mercilessly laying down the punishment on the losing group in her athletics team. He confronted her and tried to grab the hose from her hands, but it ended up drenching her in water. Instead of beating him up, she just grunted and walked away. The next day, Heiai woke up late for his date, and got even more delayed when Zuli locked him in his room to make him stay home. He had to climb over to the next apartment, where he asked the little girl, Yuayu, to let him use her house door after bribing her with some sweets. He showed up late on their date, but Zia forgave him and invited him to go get a drink in the cafe. The mood was quiet and awkward, unlike the dreamy confession that Heiai whipped up in his head. In his virgin imagination, Zia was a princess who gracefully and adorably handed a gift along with her confession of love to him while he was a prince. However, Zia was red from embarrassment because it was her first ever date, making Heiai worried and pressed his hand on her forehead, asking if she had a fever. The moment they realized their faces were just inches from each other, they pulled away out of embarrassment and turned quiet again. Heiai suggested they go to the anime festival to get rid of the awkwardness between them, but they were still tiptoeing around each other as they walked side by side, weaving through the crowd taking photos of cosplayers. To his surprise, Heiai saw Shuin in a cute cat-maid outfit, posing for the cameras. When she saw him and the girls from her athletics team from afar, she dragged him and Zia away from the crowd to a private room, where she told him how people seeing her in this cute outfit would destroy her school reputation of being the tough alpha woman. But Heiai didn't understand her struggle and told her to show her true self to others. At that moment, the announcer said that the female cosplay competition was about to start through the speakers, but unfortunately for Shuin, she always went solo, so she was not qualified to enter. To solve this, Zia suggested that the three of them form a group to enter the competition, exciting Shuin, who turned the reluctant Heiai into a cute trap bunny-made character. Zuli, who was hiding in another stall, snapped a photo of him from behind and was turned on by how cute he was. Shuin's shriek had Zia and Heiai running to her, and discovered her costume was riddled with holes. It was an obvious sabotage, and as if that weren't bad enough, it was the very first outfit she made for herself, so it left her so heartbroken that she ran away. This spurred Heiai to win the competition no matter what, but before that, he took a leak while coming up with their battle plan. Maytada suddenly appeared, curious to what he was up to, which shocked him because they were in the men's toilet. Her appearance gave him inspiration, and got her involved in the plan as well. On stage, Heiai tripped in front of the audience out of nervousness, but was able to turn it into a cute act that all the simps fell for. Meanwhile, Zia searched frantically for Shuin all over the place, but couldn't find her anywhere at all. Later on at the main event, Heiai stood alone on stage again after all his efforts to delay the performance, until Zia found Shuin, and sang the audience a little song, which they didn't appreciate because they wanted to see Shuin. Unknown to all of them, she was just above the stage, watching everything unfold with sad eyes. The boos from the audience inspired Heiai to reveal how much pain she was in, just to hide her identity, but he confessed that he actually loved this side of her, because it felt the most real to him. As he called out to her, Xiuan fell from above, but before she hit bottom, a strange light transformed both her and Hei's outfit, and she fell right into his arms. The audience loved it so much that they were declared as the winners on the spot. Even though the competition was supposed to be all female, Maytada was able to save them in time through her magic, so she heaved a sigh of relief from above when she saw the two of them were okay. Xiuan was still skeptical about magic and asked Hei to explain what exactly happened, but he had no answer to offer her. Zuli was standing backstage about to rip them apart from jealousy when she overheard some girls talking about how cute Hei was and wanted him on their team. She dragged her huge blade behind her as she trudged towards them with a murderous look in her eyes. The girls went quiet as she approached them and shrieked when she slashed them. Hei and Xiuan met in the dressing room after the show and fought over who would get to change first. When Xiuan pushed him, both their clothes vanished, so she threw him out of the room, along with his casual clothes he wore earlier. After getting dressed, he thanked Maytada for saving them, making her blush. She thought it was strange the way the human mind works, as he looked at her with kind eyes. Later on, Zia shyly appeared in the hallway and asked if they could go home now. Ai couldn't believe that he had forgotten about her and invited Xiuan to come along with them. But she was at tsundere about it, so by the time she sorted out her feelings, she found nobody waiting outside her door. Meanwhile, Hei and Zia said their goodbyes at an intersection because Hei wanted to talk to Xiuan, making Zia a little jealous. When Xiuan finally came, he called out to her and asked her if she wanted to crash at his place for a while, which didn't go well considering she was at tsundere, and because he was an idiot who didn't even consider the context. He brushed her reaction off, thinking the spell had already been lifted anyway, and wished that she would just show her true self to others. Later that night, he went to visit a hot blonde woman's apartment. The blonde woman welcomed him, mentioning how long it has been since he last visited, and grabbed his hand to show him inside. The hot woman turned out to be his teacher Ms. Jai, and meeting with her had him going on a trip down memory lane. In the past, he and Zuli would always compete for the top grade, but she could never beat him, so she kept chasing and hitting him out of frustration. To escape her beatings, Hei purposely lowered his grade, making her smile and confident. But in middle school, she announced on a megaphone that if he didn't get the top score this time around, he would do everything she asked and go with her to America. Since he didn't want that, he did his best and claimed the top spot. Seeing how things turned out, Zuli thought he hated her and yelled that he'll regret this, as she ran away with tears in her eyes. Just then, Ms. Jai had passed out from all the beer she drank, and teased Hei the next day by calling him darling out in public. At school, Hei visited Xiuan during her team's training session, and made a ridiculous bet against all the girls on her team. The condition was that he had to get the top score in the whole school, and if he won, they would do all as he said. This hit the ego of the girls on the athletics team, and showered him with insults as they proudly accepted his bet, thinking it would be an easy win for them, considering one of their members was part of the top 5. Hei wasn't the least bit intimidated by their confidence, and riled them up even more. Starting from that moment, he studied as hard as he can, reading piles of books even into the night. On the day before the exam, he saw Zuli standing alone in the rain outside his window, mumbling he's back, so Hei took an umbrella and rushed down to see her. Her confidence was crushed as she trembled before him, feeling all worthless because her ex-boyfriend was back. He wiped the tears streaming down her face and assured her that everything would be fine. He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close to his chest, letting go of the umbrella as they got drenched in the midnight rain. After that, her mother thanked him for taking care of her and informed him that Zuli was a bit unstable at the moment and would not be attending school for a while. The next day, the rain had stopped, and Hei zipped through the exams like it was nothing, annoying the girls from the athletics team. On the day the test results were about to be released, Hei proudly entered the gym where the athletics team were training, and showed them the maid outfit that he wanted Xiuan to wear for 2 weeks when they lost the bet, shocking Xiuan enough for her to let go of the ball in her hand. All this time, she was worried about how tired Hei was from all the studying and was stumped by what could be the reason behind him suddenly making that bet. But now that it was all clear, she was left dumbfounded. When they all looked at the results, they were shocked to see Hei ranked first, and screamed at him, calling him a pervert and a cheat. They even had the faculty confirm his grades, but were disappointed to know that he didn't really cheat. When the girls were gone, the teacher commented about how Hei got the entire faculty startled at his sudden rise in the top spot in the school, and didn't realize that he had that kind of potential. At the gym, the students were losing their heads over Xiuan's cute maid outfit, as she cheerfully gave away posters to recruit new members to her team. The crowd were practically drooling at her as they took pictures and were dying each time she flashed them an adorable smile. Heiai put his hands on her shoulders and gave her a bit of a push to make her more confident about dressing up that way in front of the school. He even declared that she would be dressing like that for 2 weeks because in his mind, this would ease her into the kind of reputation that would balance her tough personality with this new cute side. Meanwhile, Lin Yuing watched them with jealousy from the back, whispering to herself that Heiai had forgotten her and his kids. At the rooftop, Xia dropped by in the middle of Heiai and Mei Tada's conversation about the spell being broken. Of course, she still wasn't able to see the goddess and looked straight at Heiai, who played it cool by lying that he just wanted to chill at the rooftop because he was feeling hot. Xuan made an entrance by throwing the maid outfit Heiai gave to her to his face and said that the size was too small, and Xia, who had picked it out for her, slipped away in embarrassment, leaving the two of them alone. Heiai acted all cute to escape her anger, making Xuan chuckle. As she turned around, she expressed how happy he made her feel, even though it was a bit perverted. After that, in the hallway, Mei Tada asked Heiai who was the guy that Zuli was talking about last night in the rain. He revealed that the guy she was mumbling about was her ex-boyfriend, and that she wouldn't have ended up the way she was now if it weren't for him. After their conversation, 2 kids ran up behind him, calling him daddy as they pushed him down the floor. Behind them stood Lin Yuan, who was grinning at her kids and at Heiai, who was supposed to be their father. The impossible has happened to Heiai because he was virgin as fuck. It shocked him enough for his soul to leave his body, but Mei Tada threw him back to face reality. The 2 children, Xiao Ming and Xiao Hong, looked like carbon copies of Heiai and Lin Yuan as they stared up at Heiai with big innocent eyes. Heiai knelt down to them and told them to call him Uncle Jiang when they were outside, and that he would meet them at the school gate with their mother, promising to give them sweets in return. When they were gone, Mei Tada explained that if enough time had passed, the magic would begin to fulfill the person's wishes, making their fantasy and delusions become real, which meant that the 2 children were created by magic and gained physical form. At the school gate, Yuan received a phone call telling her to come to the office, so she instructed the kids to stay put, while she went to follow the order, but the kids decided to play around and got separated. Later on, she apologized to Heiai for losing the kids, but he reassured her that nothing bad would happen to them, and that they should split up to go look for them. Outside the school building, Xia found the little girl, Xiao Hong, and helped her look for her Uncle Jiang, without knowing that it was actually Heiai. Meanwhile, the little boy, Xiao Ming, was stirring up trouble all over the school, pretending to be a hero defeating demons, and ended up sneaking inside the girls' dressing room. Heiai saw him through a slit in the door and thought that he'd get in trouble again and walked away. But Tang Xuan caught him and accused him of being a pervert. Soon enough, the entire school was onto him again, but thinking he could help, Xiao Ming rushed to his rescue, but ended up pulling down Xuan's skirt instead. Xuan took this out on Heiai and had the girls punish him. Meanwhile, Yuan waited patiently at the school gate until the crowd thinned out and she was left all alone. But at the horizon, Heiai appeared with both kids safely at his side. Mei Tada spawned behind him, praising him for doing well as she pounded her fist slightly at his back, but he told her that a shoulder rub would be more comfortable. Unable to see the goddess, Yuan thought that he meant to request it from her, and got up to massage him, so Heiai brought up a different topic to change the mood. He made her see sense by asking her to do simple math based on the kids' ages. If they were born 7 to 8 years ago, that would make him and Yuan 12 years old when they had them. But Yuan didn't see the problem in that, and still believed that they were their kids. Mei Tada explained that if this continued, then all of the people she would be interacting with will also be affected by the magic and blur their memories. That was definitely the case when Yuan's mother, Xiao Xin, threw a sharp knife above his head the moment they arrived at the door. She grabbed his collar and threatened him to address her properly as mother, not ma'am, as she waved the dangerous blade around, calling him a scoundrel for not coming for several days. He was invited inside to eat with them in their small and shabby apartment. After dinner, Heiai and Yuan were cleaning up when their hands brushed each other, making them blush and shy away from each other. When their chores were done, Heiai helped the kids with their assignments and got them to sleep as Yuan told them to. At the living room, Heiai was listening to the evening news when Yuan showed up in a short nightgown and invited him to sleep, since it looked like her mother was not coming home. But he was saved by a phone call from Xia, who asked him to go out on a date at Heiju Amusement Park on Sunday. Heiai agreed, but Yuan, who overheard this, made him promise to take her and the kids there as well. Caught off guard by this sudden responsibility, he agreed reluctantly and called Xia to cancel their date. But he remembered her housekeeper's words about her being lonely all the time, and lied that he wouldn't be late this time, which made her very happy. On Sunday, Heiai was determined to make both dates successful, and planned to start the operation an hour apart from each other. At 9:00 a.m., he took Ewan and the kids to the Ferris wheel, but was scared of how high it was, and hugged a random lady's leg in fear, provoking her boyfriend and earning Ewan's disgust. After the ride, he speed ran all the amusement park rides in 30 minutes with them, and got so sick that he had to throw up at a nearby bulletin board. When he was done, Maytada showered him with snacks to encourage him, but he waved it off and rushed to his and Zia's meeting spot action movie style. He thought she'd be late like an average girl would, but surprisingly, she was already waiting for him by the fountain. Judging by her shy reaction, Heiai suspected that she was going to confess her feelings to him, but they got interrupted by a street photographer who wanted to take their photo. Both of them were acting awkwardly towards each other, so the photographer asked them to be more intimate, assuming them to be a couple. Zia pressed her chest to Heiai to pose for the camera, but her hat was blown by the wind. When Heiai caught it for her, Zia stood on her toes to kiss him. A few hours later, he wondered if it was Cupid's chocolates effect again, but Maytada called him a dumbass moron, because Cupid's chocolates had nothing to do with Zia's feelings for him. After looking at the time, Heiai rushed to find a gift but ended up running into Zheng Dong, an old friend, who told him that Duyu's, Zuli's ex-boyfriend, was back from America. Even though he liked her, Dong made Heiai swear to protect Zuli this time, so Yuz wouldn't hurt her again. Just then, Heiai ran into Xuan, who was out shopping with her girls and got into an argument with her. And if that wasn't enough, Zia was calling him on his phone. With his life at stake, Heiai asked Xuan to keep Zia company, while he returned to Yuan with a stuffed teddy bear to make the kids happy. To cheer them up, he entered with them in a parent-child quiz to win them the prize. Heiai crushed all the questions so hard, his competition had given up and even the host got intimidated. He ended up winning the prize, which was just a meal voucher, and bought the kids ice cream with it. As they watched them from the corner, Yuan and Heiai shared an intimate talk over a drink and ice cream. Yuan commented how sweet it was for him to look after the kids, even though he had no income, and that he was also introverted like a certain someone she knew. Heiai didn't let that slip up pass him by, and quickly figured out that the person she was referring to was her father. He asked her where her father was, bringing tears to her eyes as she slammed the table in anger. She never answered the question, and went shopping with the kids somewhere to avoid discussion. Zia and Yuan, who were walking nearby, saw Heiai with her and was concerned by how red her eyes had been, as if she had been crying. They immediately assumed it was his fault, and strung him up to interrogate him. But when they found out that he was only trying to help her, they let him go out of concern for her. As the two girls watched him leave by bus, Yuan asked Zia if she was okay to let him go like that and be with another girl. Zia replied that Heiai was a compassionate guy and Yuan needed help, so she couldn't have stopped him even if she wanted to. Meanwhile, Heiai apologized to Yuan for crossing the line earlier with her. She understood that he was only looking out for her and smiled. Heiai waved the photographer to them and asked him to take a group photo of them. The photographer recognized him and was even surprised to hear the kids call him daddy, making him assume that he was cheating on his wife with the pretty girl from earlier. At home, Yuan thanked him for what he did, but warned him never to mention anything like that in front of the kids, as her eyes dug deep into his soul like a knife. Looking once more at their group photo, Heiai remembered Maytada's words, that false memories often have some connection to reality, making him determined to investigate the people around Yuan to know the truth. The next day, he went to Yuan's elementary school and tried to find her homeroom teacher by barging into the faculty room like an idiot. As expected, the entire faculty was hostile towards him and was about to beat him up, but he managed to slip away and bumped into Yuan's homeroom teacher in the hallway. She told him that when she was a student teacher, Yuan's father would always come pick her up after classes, and that Yuan herself was a cheerful and outgoing kid. But one day, her father left her with just a reminder to be a good girl, and turned his back, never to return again. Apparently, her parents got divorced, sending Yuan to a spiral of depression and cut off from the world. Hearing all this, Heiai asked her for Yuan's father's address, but obviously failed. As a last resort, he decided to break into the police station to gather data on him. He started sneaking around, turning off the lights to blind the guard, creepily opening the door, and sneaking behind him to get to the files. Naturally, that didn't end well, at least if he didn't actually know the guard stationed there. The guard, Yan, was a close friend of his and helped him access Yoon's records, but both of them were surprised that there was no trace of her father in their data. He told Hae that this usually meant that they may have left the country, so Hae asked Yan to call him if he found anything else. After returning home, he found his parents waiting at the dinner table with a serious expression, warning him that they would come knocking on their door soon. Moments later, limousines ominously arrived in front of their apartment, and Zuli blasted the door open. She took off her gloves, as she didn't even hesitate to drag Hae in front of his parents towards his room, where she pushed him against the bed, wanting to sleep together. Hae escaped to the bathroom for a few hours, waiting for her to fall asleep, and when she did, he pulled the blanket close to her chest, remembering the time when Zuli gifted him sweets because she liked him. When he decided to pull an all-nighter on his cold bedroom floor, Yan suddenly called him to tell him that he found 20 possible contact numbers of Yujia, exciting him enough to wake Zuli. The next day at class, Hae called the numbers that Yan listed for him, hearing a bunch of crazy people on the other end of the line as he moved from one number to the next. The last number on the list belonged to Yujia, but he didn't bother to pick it up when Hae called it the first time. Later that day, after getting some shut-eye, Hae called his number again, and this time he picked it up while he was in the grocery store. He startled him by introducing himself as his son-in-law and casually told him that he and Yoon already have 2 kids, provoking him to come home. But Yujia just gave him an unexpected truth bomb. Yoon was not actually his real daughter, and Hae's heart dropped the moment he heard this. It looked like the situation was beyond him now, but he decided to push forward and ask her mother instead. At their apartment, he overheard them arguing behind the open door. Zin screamed at her to throw Yujia's picture away, because his real father was long dead, but this only made Yoon run away in tears with her children in tow. The next thing Hae knew, he was locked out of the apartment, with Zin refusing to even talk to him. So seeing this commotion, an old lady approached him to tell him what he wanted to know. Once he knew everything, he was overcome with grief and regrets as he told Maytada the truth behind Yoon's family. Yoon's real father, Zio-hee, was a police officer. On the day of their civil wedding, he was called in because of an emergency situation. Zin waited for him full of hope as she was expecting a child with him, but her heart was crushed when he returned to her in a coffin. He had died in the line of duty, and Lin Yujin, who used to be in love with her, took care of her and even married her, even though his parents were so against it that they disowned him. After shouldering years of his parents' disappointment, he eventually broke down and divorced Zin with tears in his eyes. Yoon, who only ever knew him as her father, was so heartbroken by this that years later, she still yearned for his love. Hae didn't even know what to do now that he knew all this. On the other hand, Maytada pointed out how Yuji still kept his personal phone's number for them after all these years, because in his heart, he still worried for them. This only made Hae erupt in anger at all of them. He was mad at Zio-hee for committing to marriage even when he knew his job could take his life at any time. And he was mad at Yujia for not seeing through his marriage and just left when things got bad for him. Maytada disagreed by how he saw things, and argued that just because police officers have dangerous jobs, doesn't mean that they don't have the right to have a family. He praised Yujia for taking on the burden of a shattered family, and raised Yoon as if she was his own for many years out of his own love. But Hae wasn't willing to hear all that, and went home with a sour look on his face, locking himself up in his room without having dinner with his own family. He even threw his stuff on the floor out of anger, but when he saw his framed group photo with Yoon and the kids fall to the floor as well, he sunk to the ground and realized how much of an idiot he was to be venting out his anger on his parents and Maytada, who overheard his apology through the open window and tried cheering him up. The next day, Hae called Yujia again to tell him that he understood the situation now, and reminded him not to give up so easily as a man. After all, Yoon still wished for his love and Zin struggled to pull her family together. Yujia wasn't ready for this conversation and hung up, but Hae called him again and again, despite how many times he was turned away. One day, he and Yoon picked up the kids from school to go painting scenery, but as they were crossing the street, trouble awaited them. Truck Kun took a break from Isekai Ying people and crashed straight into Yoon. Moments later, ambulances arrived to take away the victims. As this was happening, Yujia received a call from Hae telling him that Yoon got into a car accident, startling him from his seat. Afraid that he would never see her again, Yujia jumped into his car and drove to the hospital, only to find the hospital bed empty as the doctor shook his head and muttered how young the patient was. He thought she was now gone forever and regretted how he never came home all this time. as bitter tears ran down his face. But just then, Yuen appeared behind him, surprised to see him after so many years. Her memory of him had gone hazy, but her heart remembered who he was and ran to his arms, wrapping him tightly in a warm embrace. Meanwhile, in the other room, Heiai woke up wounded on a hospital bed, remembering how he pushed Yuen out of the way just in time before the truck collided with her, and how Meitada looked at him with tears in her eyes as she stopped the truck with her powers. Xia and Xun greeted him when he woke up, but he fell asleep almost instantly, and had a dream of Xiao Ming and Xiao Hong getting off a carousel and giving him a drawing of all their memories together. They tearfully said their goodbyes as they hugged him one last time before the magic that created them vanished into thin air. When he woke up once more, Yuen was at his bed waiting for him to open his eyes. A month later, the hospital finally let him go. Thinking it was going to be the start of a great day, Heiai immediately stepped on shit, and all of his harem stepped out of their own cars to pick him up, creating a battlefield atmosphere. To escape them, Heiai snuck out the back, but ended up falling into Zuli's trap and got taken away in her limousine. However, the competition didn't end there just yet, because later on, the girls planned to give him soup to help him recover in their own ways, and met each other in the hallway. Caught in a four-way deadlock, the girls raced to his side, only to be disappointed and shocked to see Heiai naked with another man.
Sensational.
Jingdong happened to be there to help him apply ointment, but Heiai was being a bitch about it, causing the scene to look like something out of a doujinshi. The girls continued to fight over whose soup should Heiai eat first, after presenting him one impressive dish after another. His twin neighbors, Tao Tao and Yuen Yuen, came over after smelling the appetizing scent of the soups, giving him the idea to make them finish all the dishes. Alone at his room, Dong helped him change into his clothes, telling him how intense his harem was, and asked him why he wasn't going out with Zuli even though he has always loved her, and that she was loving him like crazy now. Heiai frowned as he told him that he didn't want to be a substitute for her, and asked him to meet him outside after he was done changing. After Dong had left, Meitada showered Heiai with snacks, as she cried to him about how she caused the fighting couple to break up with her magic. Zuli barged into his room after hearing her voice from behind the door, and tore the place apart to look for her. The other girls joined in to confront him, but when Meitada was discovered, she tried to stop time. But her magic only changed the girls' outfits a few times. She eventually made them temporarily forget the incident, and later on cried how she might turn into a mortal as her magic power grew weaker because Heiai's chocolate incident had dragged on too long. Before he could leave the room, the television announced that the famous idol Sandy had collapsed and went into a coma after uttering Heiai's name. Apparently, she was one of the girls who ate the chocolate and was now head over heels for him. But there was something different about her. Unlike the other girls, Sandy could manipulate reality itself by being able to use magic. She summoned Heiai to a different realm, where she greeted him with her beautiful singing voice. Heiai asked her who he was for her, and was surprised by her magnetic force, as she replied that he was her lover, the co-owner of her dreams, and the one she wanted to bring into her new world. She took him to a rooftop and invited him to jump with her, but Heiai didn't want to follow her delusion and offered his hand, so that he could bring her back to reality. Instead, Sandy took him with her as she leapt off the building, and sprouted magical wings, welcoming him to her world. Fantasy and reality became mixed up when Sandy forcefully dragged Heiai to see her world from the back of a giant paper airplane. Creatures under the sea swam freely across the blue skies, giant cats slept on top of the city buildings, and even the heavens broke apart into blocks when she willed it. Meitada told Heiai they were inside her imaginary world, so he should calm his shit down, but that was not enough to reassure him, especially when he got thrown off to a giant tree and saw a portal to another dimension in its hollow. Sandy invited him to go to another world, but he was afraid he wouldn't be able to remain human if he crossed dimensions, and suggested they buy ice cream instead. However, their adventures didn't end with their cold dairy dessert, and Heiai got transported to an aquarium, where surprisingly, he could breathe underwater as if he were in air. All sorts of underwater creatures swam all around him, as Sandy held his hand, marveling at the scenery before them. But this only made her sad. Besides the two of them, she had nobody else in this world, no one to share all these beautiful moments with. When they rose to the surface, Sandy asked him again if he wanted to leave with her and go to the other world. But Heiai slipped away from her grip and looked at her with sad eyes. Tears started streaming down her face as her world broke apart and lost color. To prevent her from self-destructing, Heiai suggested that they leave for the other world together tomorrow, putting a temporary smile on Sandy's face. Back in reality, Maytada told him she was concerned about his decision because the Sandy they met earlier was just her soul, and her body was still unconscious in the hospital. So that meant if her soul crossed to the other world, she wouldn't be able to go back and her body would become lifeless. Naturally, that didn't sit well with Heiai, so he wanted some time to think about what to do to make her want to stay in the real world. Later that night, after he got out of the shower, Sandy was waiting for him on his bed and gave him the song she wrote for him for being her #1 supporter from the very beginning. He couldn't accept her gift, knowing full well that he wasn't actually the one in her memories, but she gave it to him anyway and left through the window. Maytada became even more concerned now because it looked like Sandy wasn't willing to wait until tomorrow to cross over, so she agreed to Heiai's risky plan, daring to lose everything that made her a love goddess. Watch this next video. Till next time, my fellow legendary plot masters.